Well, hi, everybody, and a very pleasant day to you on this beautiful day here in East County, in San Diego County. And this is Steve Dolan along with Ramon Scott here on Dolan's Dugout. Just to recap a little bit this weekend, Ramon, of course, San Diego Padres, good start. They beat Arizona 3 out of 4. Of course, after you win your first 3, you want the sweep. But just a reminder, last year, the San Diego Padres opened their season by beating the Arizona Diamondbacks 3 out of 4 games in San Diego. So the Padres are right where they were last year when they started a season where they went 37-23 in a 60-game season. Of course, we're back to 162 games now. So far, so good. Of course, we have the San Francisco Giants coming in for the next 3 days. And I do have some thoughts on the Arizona series, Ramon, but I wanted to ask you first, what was your feeling on how the Padres did this past weekend?
Well, I'm just happy that we're tied for first with the blue team. We made fun of them after the opening game. We're getting our win, and they took their loss. But, hey, I think we all kind of thought we'd go 4-0. We'd win that game yesterday, but just a little bit of a shaky start. I thought Arizona played well. I thought their pitcher looked really good. He did a really nice job. Probably could have beat any team in the league the way he performed in yesterday's game. And Padres did bite the Diamondbacks a little bit in the game. We know that Fernando Tatis Jr. got that home run, so maybe he's kind of shaking the rust off a little bit. There should be no panic. I don't even think he's the type of guy that's going to suffer one of those contract year after contract lapses or months after contract lapses. I think he's just out of form to start the season. He's a guy who practices in the game, really, and as the weeks roll along, you'll see that. So no problem. 3-1. You signed me up. We didn't even have to watch those games, but enjoyed them all thoroughly.
Well, Ramon, just a couple things. Couple of the good. First of all, to start off, Eric Hosmer. He went through a streak there where he had 7 straight hits. Jake Cronenworth, his first 7 at-bats, got on base. So far, I'd say if you had to pick 2 MVPs through 4 games or through 2% of the season, probably Hosmer and Cronenworth. And, of course, the biggest MVP from East County, Joe Musgrove. What a performance Saturday night. 6 innings, no runs, 8 strikeouts, 78 pitches, 57 strikes. Crisp as could be. I thought Musgrove was just outstanding. Outstanding. Of course, on the other hand, the 2 weak points so far, you mentioned Tatis. He was 1 for 14. Then in his last 3 at-bats, he did get a walk, a solid single, and a 465-foot home run that I think is still traveling maybe. So maybe he snapped out of it. But the bad part about Tatis, he's made 5 errors in 4 games. Last year, he made 3 errors in an entire 60-game season. So didn't like that, and didn't like Chris Paddock yesterday either. I thought it was interesting when manager Jace Tingler was asked after the game about Paddock. He described him as being okay, and I think okay was the best you're going to get out of Paddock yesterday. Problem with Paddock yesterday, he only had 2 pitches, a fastball and a changeup. And Arizona was laying off the low changeup. They were hitting the high fastball. I just thought Paddock was way off, and he's only throwing about 50% first pitch strikes, and he used to be at about 75%. So far, not so good for Paddock. I'm not going to say he's coming out of the rotation yet, but he needs to step it up because at some point, Nelson Lamet comes back, and we'll see tonight how Adrian Morejon does. Ramon, your thoughts?
Well, I'm actually going to tip my hat to Paddock for recovering a little bit after the poor start in the game. So I'll give him props for that. Actually, I think one thing we've seen sometimes is his frustration level, and he really recouped himself there a little bit and got his game back on track, I thought, for the rest of the game. As you mentioned about Tatis Jr. And his defense, I touched on the opening remarks, but I just want to add he does not make errors. So, again, this is just a player that's just out of form right now. There's no panic. He's not going to suddenly lose it. Defensively either. So other than Shohei Ohtani's shot, I think Tatis hit one of the best shots of the season with his monstrous home run in that game. So again, hats off. And, Steve, you mentioned Musgrove. If you had to look at Hosmer and Musgrove and their performances so far, they're among the top performances in the league out of the first week of the season. So that's great. But I think shame on us, shame on me, Steve. We didn't mention Diamondbacks reliever heading into the series, Kevin Ginkel, and he did very well. I think he had a great series against the Padres, and obviously was we've seen him before, but opening series of the season. We know that a lot of fans were in the park of the players. Don't know how it went down for Kevin, but hats off to another El Cap guy.
Oh, yeah, Ramon, the interesting thing about Kevin Ginkel yesterday, in the 8th inning, the Padres had runners on first and third with 2 outs. Arizona's pitcher, Joaquin Soria, hurt himself, so Kevin Ginkel had not even been warming up yet. So he comes on with 2 on, 2 out. And, I mean, what does he do? He gets a strikeout. So Ginkel got Arizona out of the 8th inning, and that was at a point, again, with 2 on, 2 out, a home run ties the game. So Ginkel got a huge out there. So props to Ginkel, and, of course, he does play for Arizona, but he also played for El Capitan, my alma mater. So, like you say, props to Vaquero.
Yeah, and great job on him on how his career has progressed and really made himself into a real major league reliever. No doubt about it. Is a key part of the Diamondbacks bullpen. But, Steve, we made fun a little bit of Tim Hill, but so far, this is the Padres bullpen of the past. This is what we've come to expect as Padres fans. We know that we always have a good bullpen, however it's shook down, whether it's been great coaching or just the way that the bullpens have developed in this town. Maybe it's how the economics of a Padres franchise has worked over the decades. The bullpen is something that we've counted on almost for the last 2 decades. And really, over the last couple of years, we've seen it slide a little bit. If we can get this performance out of the bullpen the rest of the season, I see no reason why we won't make it to the postseason. This is a bullpen that was among the best in the league on the opening weekend.
I agree, Ron. Well, let me give you a little stat here. The bullpen so far has a collective ERA of 1.09. And what I thought was interesting about the bullpen, there's 3 guys in the bullpen you did not know whether they're going to make the team. Ryan Weathers, 3 shutout innings after Musgrove on Saturday night to get his first career save. Taylor Williams, he's pitched an inning and a third without giving up any runs. He's pitched in 2 games. And then Nabil Chrismat, who was with St. Louis last year, but he did not make their playoff roster. Chrismat pitched 2 shutout innings yesterday. So you take Weathers, Chrismat, Williams, 3 guys again who you didn't know whether they'd make the team, and they've been lights out so far. So I really like the pin. Another thing, Ramon, I like about the Padre pitching, yeah, they're putting runners on base, but you know what? In this series, Arizona, with runners on base, had 3 hits in 31 at-bats. Yeah, as you know, I'm the stats guy for Don Orsillo, Mark Grant on Valley Sports San Diego, so they love stats like that. Now, to me, that was a stat that kind of got overlooked this weekend, but Arizona didn't even bat 100 when they had runners in scoring position, and to that, hats off to the Padres pitching staff.
Yeah, and the bullpen is not putting very many on. They might be pitching to contact. That might be the approach that these guys are taking. They did not walk very many batters as well. So just a great job, I thought, all around. No problem with yesterday's game. Disappointing, certainly. Just seemed like we weren't really going to ever break through in that one, thanks to Widener. Did a great job for Arizona. Maybe something for them to look forward to, the way he delivered. Really looked like he kind of outsmarted the Padres a little bit with his pitching. So 3-1, we'll take it heading into this series against the Giants starting tonight. And you mentioned Adrian Morejon, and look, we've gotten to know him pretty well now. Amazing over all these years, finally making it to the majors and getting his starts last year. But this is a start tonight where there's no real. He's a starting pitcher tonight, Steve. Let's face it. Last year he was in there for just a couple of innings, an opener, if you will. But tonight, this is the first week of the season. It's his first start. This is a major league start for Morejon.
Absolutely. And Ramon, one thing to remember about Morejon is that the Padres signed him out of Cuba for $11 million when he was 16 years old. So he's still a young guy, still in his early 20s. Let me go through the pitching rotation if I could for this series, because tonight, of course, Morejon pitches against Anthony DeSclafani. And if you remember that name, Anthony DeSclafani used to pitch for the Cincinnati Reds. He goes tonight. Tomorrow night, you have Yu Darvish against the Giants, Aaron Sanchez, and then Wednesday afternoon, Blake Snell is back against the Giants, Kevin Gossman. So could be an interesting series there. And one thing to remember about the Giants, too, they've got their bullpen all rested because they didn't play yesterday. The Giants lost 2 out of 3 in Seattle and had a rare Sunday off. And as far as the Padres bullpen is concerned, we've talked about the 4 guys who've closed before: Keone Kela, of course, Emilio Pagan, Drew Pomeranz, and, of course, Mark Melancon, who has 2 saves. Kela pitched an inning yesterday. The other 3 didn't pitch at all. So the Padres bullpen is pretty much set, too. So going into this series, it's not like either team has a guy like, you got to rest this guy in the bullpen. Each team has a fresh bullpen. And as you know, Ramon, nowadays, starting pitchers rarely go 5 or more innings. And with Morejon, if he goes 5, I'd be shocked. So it's going to be a bullpen game. So it'd be interesting, though. As I say, it's in science.
Yeah, I agree with that. I wasn't suggesting that Morejon could go deep, but certainly more than maybe the 2 or 3 innings. I think he can. They expect him certainly to stretch it into a 4th or possibly a 5th inning tonight. So looking forward to this series, no doubt. Padres facing 3 pretty hard-throwing right-handers, and that can sometimes be a little bit tough on the way that we've structured our lineup, but I think will be expected. I know the Padres are pretty substantial favorite tonight. I think about $1.60 or so against the Giants. So I don't know if you shake your head on that one, but considerable favorite in this series, and they are favorites in this series against the Giants. So I think it's just a big, big game for Morejon. That's what I'm most looking forward to tonight.
Yeah, and Ramon, of course, looking forward to Morejon tonight. And then tomorrow with Yu Darvish, of course, he only went 4 2/3 innings on opening day, and Blake Snell next on the second game, same number of pitches, or right around the same number of pitches in the mid-80s. Snell threw 86. The thing about it, though, is obviously pitchers aren't stretched out yet. It's interesting in Blake Snell's game Friday night, he'd thrown those 86 pitches, shut out in 4 2/3 innings, and he came out because they weren't going to let him go past the mid-80s. I would imagine each one will be stretched out into 90 or so. One thing about Snell, love watching him pitch, but one thing I do remember about the American League playoffs last year, because remember, Blake Snell pitched here in San Diego on Tampa Bay's team in the American League playoffs last year. The first game against the Yankees, he barely went 5 innings and threw 105 pitches. So one thing Snell knows, he needs to be more efficient with his pitch count. And same with Darvish. Darvish threw in the high 80s on opening day. So big thing for those guys. Padres need at least 5 innings out of both those guys, and hopefully close it out for Morejon, because, again, you don't want to get into your bullpen too much yet. You do have 9 guys out there, but you don't want to have to burn guys out like Craig Stammen on Saturday night, pitched 2 innings, which is the longest he's pitched in 4 years. So at this point, you got to be careful with the bullpen, because you don't want to wear guys out. I mean, I know it's new in the season and all, but you really have to be very efficient with your pitcher. So hopefully, again, you can get close to 5 from Morejon tonight and at least 5 from Darvish and Snell. And then, you got a day off Thursday. So, of course, before you go to Texas for 3 games over the weekend, you can certainly have some rest. But, again, I'm going to be curious to see how Darvish, how Snell do the second time around.
Now, Steve, at the top of the lineup, we saw Pham start the season leading off. We saw him down the middle of the lineup yesterday. What do you think the philosophy is going to be for Tingler? Do you think he's just going to approach it on a, who we're facing on a given day? Do you think that they're searching for answers there? What do you think's going on at the top of the lineup especially?
I think at the top of the lineup, Ramon, they're waiting for Grisham to come back, because he hasn't played at all yet. He's hurt, but they're expecting Grisham in center field and Nola behind the plate both to be back this weekend in Texas. And once Grisham's back, I believe he'll lead off, and Tatis will bat second, Machado third, and then, of course, you'll have Hosmer fourth, and then go on down from there with Myers and Cronenworth and the catcher, and, everybody, Tommy Pham in there somewhere. But I think that's what they're really waiting for, is Grisham to come back and be their leadoff hitter. I think against tough lefties, maybe you sit him or bat him eighth and Tatis leads off. But right now, I don't think you're going to see Tommy Pham much as a leadoff hitter once the Padres get the regular center fielder back. So we'll see how that goes. But I think right now, Jace Tingler's experimenting. It's funny because, Eric Hosmer had 6 straight hits the first 2 games, and then he sat Saturday night against the tough lefty, with Cronenworth playing first and then Ha-Seong Kim playing second. And I think, Kim's going to play a lot. I mean, he can play all over the infield. I think when Tatis needs a day off, or even Machado, Kim will play. He can play short, he can play third, he can play second. He's a normal shortstop. He's not going to play a whole lot there with Tatis. But I think you're going to see a lot of bouncing around. Like we said before, one thing I like about the Padres this year is their depth, because you got Kim who can play all over the field. You have Jurickson Profar who can play all over the field. And then Tucupita Marcano, he's just pinch hitting so far. I think what's going to happen with him is that probably when Grisham comes back, most likely over the weekend, I would imagine Marcano goes back to the alternate training site. The good thing for him, he's getting his feet wet in the major leagues, so he's getting a taste of it. He had a great spring. He deserved to be on this roster. But again, when the Padres get their normal center fielder Grisham back, I would imagine it'll be Marcano that goes. I don't think Kim Profar, neither one of them's going to go down, I don't think. Because Kim had 2 hits Saturday, So I think, again, he's just so valuable, plays all over the field. And also, I would think that this weekend, when they get Nola back at catcher, most likely that Luis Campusano maybe goes down the alternate side. But we'll see. They got some interesting decisions to make room. But the good thing is the Padres now are sending guys to their alternate site who could be playing in the major leagues for a lot of people. And it used to be just the opposite. It used to be they had a lot of people playing in the major leagues who needed to be playing in the minor leagues. So at least that's flipped over, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, we saw Profar kind of heat up towards the end of the series, so maybe for him too, it's just a matter of getting some repetition in there. And the Padres, man, they played some decent defense outside of Tatis, I thought, in the entire series. So it's kind of funny that Fernando had his woes the way he did. And you said it. I mean, you could look back last season. I think Kevin Acee mentioned in his column today that, took him 30 games to make an error last season. So this is just an anomaly.
Yeah, another guy we don't want to overlook is Jorge Mateo. Mateo's been playing well. He made a great catch in left field. Yeah, sure. Remember our guy, our Grossmont High alum, remember Joe Musgrove, he tipped his hat, and rightfully so. Mateo, that possibly could have been a home run, debatable, but he made a great play out there. And Mateo's another guy. When we talk about Kim and Profar playing all over the field, Mateo's naturally an infielder who was playing the outfield that night. So that's what I like about the Padres, having those guys, Kim, Profar, Mateo, guys who can play all over the field. And Marcano can do the same thing. And like we talked about before, that's what the Dodgers have done over the years, is their subs are guys that can play all over the field. They're not guys that just play first base, just play shortstop or whatever. I mean, the guys – the Chris Taylors and the Max Muncies, and they used to have Kike Hernandez, these guys that could play everywhere. And that's what the Padres have got now. That's something you really need, so that when somebody needs a day off, you can put a guy in a position who knows how to play there, knows how to play several positions. It's not just you have just 3 backups that can just play one position each. So that's one of the things I really like about the Padres right now.
Now, Steve, is it okay to scoreboard watch in the first week of April, or am I just kidding myself, fooling myself?
I'd say what again?
Is it okay to scoreboard watch in the first week of April?
Scoreboard watch, I think it's okay. I mean, people are going to be watching the Dodgers and all. I mean, they come here in a week and a half, on the Friday through Sunday weekend. I think we'll be scoreboard watching in the early season, Ramon, but what's going to be interesting will be come May, June, July. I don't know that we'll be scoreboard watching every day, because once you've played 60, 70, 80 games, things change, because right now everything's magnified. Everything's magnified. You played 4 games, but that's all you have to go by. And once you start playing those games, once you get in the midseason, everything kind of starts to run together. Just like Tatis now. Okay, everybody's like, oh, he's been terrible so far until he hit the home run yesterday. You got to remember, Tatis last year would have been the National League's most valuable player, except he went through like a 2 for 29 slump towards the end of the season. So if he's doing what he's done these last 4 games in June or July, it's just a blip on the radar. But when you're doing it now, that's all you have to go by.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Hosmer is one of the team MVPs of the first series and was one of the league MVPs of the first week, along with that kid from the White Sox that got all those hits in a row.
The catcher!
You've got to love that one.
8 straight hits, and you come up for you start that way. Kind of reminds me last year. Cronenworth wasn't quite that good, but he certainly had a hot start last year, and he's had a hot start so far this year. And I think, he's really solidified a position second base where, going into last season in 2020, I thought second base was a Chrysler mark. But the good thing is Cronenworth has answered that question. The good thing about him, too, you can move him around the field. I mean, he played first base Saturday night flawlessly. He plays well there. He can play shortstop if ever Tatis needs a day off. I'm not sure if he'd go Cronenworth second, Kim short, or vice versa, but Cronenworth's very versatile, too. I mean, he's a starter, but he's a guy who can play off field. And again, the Padres have a bunch of those guys. I think that's very valuable, especially when injuries start setting in for everybody.
Yeah, and we'll never be losing by 10 runs in the eighth inning this year. But if there's a guy that's going to end up with that mop-up pitching duty, it'll probably be the former Michigan star Cronenworth getting in there to throw the innings there for losing any games. Man, he's just so awesome, and I think that he's a player that really has not caught much of the national spotlight yet, like he will, I think, once he gets a full season. He's just a ball player. That's what he is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Another guy we haven't talked about, Manny Machado, his start's been okay, but, his first home run Saturday night, he goes the opposite field. So that's the thing about Machado. When he hit that ball, you thought he didn't hit it that hard, but Manny, he's so strong. I mean, he doesn't need to hit it that hard to hit out of the park. And I think he sometimes starts fairly slow, but remember last year, I mean, he started very slowly, then all of a sudden he picks it up and he's, the third in the National League MVP race. I mean, so Machado, it's only been 4 games, but as the weather gets hot, so does Machado. And I mean, obviously, being in the number 3 spot, hitting in front of Hosmer, he's going to be on base a lot for Hosmer. So that's another plus. I mean, this team really, again, when you look through the lineup, there's really not a weak spot. And again, in the past, they've had guys starting who were minor leaguers, and the difference is this year they have guys on the bench who are major leaguers who'd be playing for a lot of teams. So I think that's really going to be one thing over the course of the season that's going to make it good for the Padres. And also with the pitching, we still have, the 5 that are here, but you've also got Nelson Lamet come back in late April. I mean, Ryan Weathers could start. Mackenzie Gore could start. I mean, so the Padres are they're loaded. The only thing is, as we've talked about, they're in the wrong division, being in the National League West. I mean, if they were in the Central, they'd win the Central easily. And in that East that's supposedly so loaded, I still think they beat out Atlanta, Mets, Phillies, whatever. They beat those teams.
Well, that's why I kidded you about scoreboard watching in the first week of the season. I mean, as it turns out, after I made fun of the Dodgers for that loss, I mean, we're both 3-1 right now, and I just have a feeling that it's going to remain close. I don't think the Dodgers are going to get that 5, 6, 7, 8 game lead or anything like that. I think we can stay within striking distance and have a great series against them, a great season series against them. The intensity will no doubt be there, especially as these crowds continue to increase over the months. We expect that to happen, and that's just going to bring an intensity through the summer and towards the postseason that anything short of a playoff berth will be a disappointment given the trajectory of this ball club right now. So series against the Giants, never an easy task. We're expected to handle the business there, and we'll be back. We're going to come back on Thursday this week to preview the Texas series as the Padres start that crazy road trip you've been briefing us about. Where do we got to go again? We got a little triangle or something?
Got to go to Texas and Pittsburgh. I mean, it's interesting that you're going those places in April. Of course, Texas for a 3-game weekend series and Pittsburgh for 4 games. I mean, they play Monday through Wednesday next week in Pittsburgh and then Thursday morning our time in Pittsburgh. What happens after the Pittsburgh series? Let me think. Oh, yeah. On Friday, April 16th, the Dodgers come to town for 3 games. And Ramon, what's interesting, because you mentioned the crowds, so far the attendance is 10,350 is what they let in with 20%. Hopefully we're in the orange tier by then, because then I think the crowds will bump up to if you could have 16 or 17,000 for that Dodger series. Because let me tell you something, even with 10,000 people, it sounds a lot louder. Because one of the things, in the old days when you'd have full stadiums could be full if you only had 10,000, they were kind of all in one area. But now they're spread out throughout the stadium, so you got noise coming throughout the stadium. And I think it makes it sound louder, even with a smaller crowd, because of the fact that people are throughout the stadium and not just in one area. And it's interesting, too, because when you go to the stadium, when you look at the seats, I mean, the seats, okay, they're marked off. I mean, if you're sitting in a seat, your seat's marked off. The seats that people cannot sit on, they have a cover on it, and those covers are on there strong. You're not going to be able to take a cover off and sit where you're not supposed to. So the Padres have done a great job on the social distancing and all, and we'll see, again, hopefully by the next homestand that San Diego can get in the orange tier. Not just for 6,000-7,000 more fans a game for the Dodgers, but for everybody to get out more. Because one thing I will say, as far as people getting out more, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday afternoon when the game ended, downtown San Diego looks like downtown New York now. People are coming out more. It is there was a lot of people downtown. And then, I mean, if you like being in crowds and all, go down there on the weekends. If you don't want to be in a mess, unless you're going to a Padre game, don't go downtown on the weekend because it is packed.
I thought one of the clip of the weekend for Mark and Don was when they talked about those people behind home plate. Those were real people. Those were not cardboard cutouts. I thought that was the funny of the weekend of all the things they said. I thought that was the funniest. Those people were actually real people moving around back there. Steve, no social commentary necessarily, but just want to know if they had talked about the two guys or discussed it with you, the events of the Major League Baseball removing the All-Star game from Atlanta. We know it kind of transcends a little bit out of baseball. It shouldn't, but that's something that happened since our last show, and it's a significant step, especially with San Diego trying to push to bring the All-Star game back sooner rather than later. But did they say anything kind of official? Did you hear anything from the club on a release at all on this?
No, nothing from the club. And Ramon, I don't think they would bring the game to San Diego or to California right now because
not immediately.
I would think Major League Baseball would want, more people than what you get in California. They'd want somewhere where you might get a bigger capacity. I think possibly it could go to Milwaukee because in Atlanta it was going to be about Hank Aaron, and Hank started his career in Milwaukee. There's also talk today about that it may go to Colorado. There's nothing official. I mean, the thing you have to be careful about, though, when you make decisions like this, are you going to get any new fans by making decisions like this? Probably not. I mean, I know people who are very liberal. I know people who are very conservative. People I know that are very liberal that aren't baseball fans. This isn't going to make them baseball fans, but decisions like this, people that are very conservative, it may lose you some baseball fans. So when politics comes into play, you got to remember it's a 50-50 thing. You're probably not going to gain fans by making a decision like that, but you can very well lose fans. I think that's something. I'll be curious to see the ratings for the All-Star game, Ramon, because my guess will be that the ratings will be down and not up because of this decision. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, it would seem like, look, we know that the situation's been in the news, especially recently because of these laws that were in effect, but I don't know if anybody was really considering, other than, privately, maybe there has been some media talk about it with Major League Baseball, but it kind of caught me by surprise and said, I wouldn't have even, considered putting pressure on Major League Baseball or other professional or amateur athletic organizations conducting events in the state of Georgia to move their events because of any laws that were passed or changed. So I think it just brought attention, maybe unnecessary attention. I don't want to say unnecessary, pardon me, brought attention to that, albeit good or bad. That's not for me to say, but it just brought it to the forefront. Maybe that's what they were publicly trying to strive for. I'm not sure that that's the case, but we'll leave it at that. We deserve an all-star game with full preparation for our beautiful park. We just had it here a few years ago, Steve, and it was one of the weekends. I've been to two of them here, and but that time to share the time with Bill and Wanda out there that whole weekend, truly special for me. Thought we'd have Bill around longer, but being with him and knowing that, it was probably one of our last times to go out to some great event like that together and share those games. Saw actually Musgrove pitch in that Future Stars game that weekend. Yeah. How about that? That was neat. So he's come full circle.
Well, Ramon, he sure has. We'll look forward to seeing Joe Musgrove pitch again. Of course, he won't pitch again until the Padres go to Texas this weekend. But once again, our time's up. I want to thank everybody for being with us this day. And just a reminder that this week we will be back live on Facebook Live Thursday morning at 11 when the Padres have an off day, the day before they go to Texas. And once again, want to thank Ramon Scott so much for being with us this morning. And Ramon, have a great week. We'll look forward to being back with you Thursday morning.
Go Padres.
All right, have a good day.